The cafe hummed with the innocent sounds of a Saturday morning. Espresso machines hissing, laughter floating between tables, ceramic clinking against saucers. But in a corner booth near the back, two coworkers crouched with phones ready, smirking as they waited to record what they thought would be the funniest disaster of the year. They'd engineered a blind date between two people they considered the perfect punchline: a broke single dad who always kept his head down, and a woman they mocked behind her back for how she looked. What they never anticipated was that humiliation, when met with dignity, could transform into something they'd never understand: love built from the ruins of cruelty. Stay with me until the end of this story, hit that like button, and drop a comment with the city you're watching from so I can see how far this journey reaches. Ethan Cole stood on the sidewalk outside Rosewood Cafe, checking his watch for the third time in as many minutes. 6:58. 2 minutes early. He exhaled slowly, watching his breath fog in the cool October air, and resisted the urge to turn around and walk away. He didn't do this. Hadn't done this in years. The whole concept of a date felt like something from another lifetime, back when he'd been a different man with different problems. Back before late-night fevers and parent-teacher conferences, before tiny shoes lined up by the door and bedtime stories that somehow never got old, no matter how many times he read them. Back before his wife walked out on a Tuesday morning and never came back. But Marcus from accounting had been insistent, cornering him by the break-room coffee maker last week with that smile that always felt a little too wide, a little too practiced. "Come on, man. It's just coffee. Friend of a friend. Nice woman. When's the last time you did something for yourself?" Ethan had wanted to say never, wanted to explain that himself didn't exist anymore, not as a separate entity. There was only him and Sophie, a unit of two that functioned best when he didn't complicate things with variables like hope or possibility. But Marcus had that look in his eyes, the one that said he wouldn't take no for an answer, and Ethan was so damn tired of being the office charity case, the guy everyone pitied. So he'd said yes. One coffee. What was the harm? Now, standing outside with his heart doing uncomfortable things in his chest, he was remembering all the ways things could go wrong. He'd Googled what to wear for a first date at 34 and felt like an idiot, scrolling through articles clearly written for people who hadn't spent the last 5 years covered in finger paints and mac and cheese stains. He'd settled on dark jeans and a button-down shirt, the blue one Sophie said made his eyes look nice, and hoped it was enough. Through the cafe window, he could see couples scattered throughout the space, bent toward each other over small tables, lost in their own worlds. For a moment, he let himself imagine it, what it might feel like to have that again. Not the early days with Rachel, which had been fire and intensity and a kind of recklessness that turned toxic the moment real life entered the equation, but something steadier, warmer, a conversation that didn't revolve around permission slips or what vegetable Sophie would actually eat this week. 7 o'clock. Ethan pulled open the door, and a wave of warmth and coffee scent washed over him. The barista behind the counter looked up with a practiced smile, and he managed a small nod before his eyes swept the space, looking for someone who might be looking for him. Marcus had been vague about what she looked like. "You'll know her when you see her," he'd said with that same too-wide smile, and Ethan had been too distracted to push for details. Now he scanned the tables, trying to figure out which of these strangers might be waiting for a broke single dad to sit down across from them. That's when he noticed them. Marcus and Derek from HR, tucked into a corner booth near the back, phones out, watching the room with the kind of focused attention that made Ethan's stomach drop. They hadn't seen him yet. They were too busy whispering to each other, Derek's shoulders shaking with suppressed laughter. Something cold settled in Ethan's chest. He started to turn, to leave before whatever this was could fully unfold, but movement near the window caught his eye. A woman sat alone at a small table, back straight, hands folded in her lap with the kind of careful stillness that spoke of someone trying very hard to look calm. She wore a deep green sweater that brought out warm undertones in her brown skin, and her hair was pulled back in a neat bun. She was looking at the door with an expression Ethan recognized because he'd worn it himself 100 times, hope fighting with the certainty that hope was dangerous. She was also, he realized with a sinking sensation, exactly the kind of woman Marcus and Derek would think was funny to set him up with. Not because there was anything wrong with her, but because Marcus and Derek were the kind of men who measured women by a very narrow standard, and anyone who didn't fit got relegated to punchline status. He'd heard them in the break room, the casual cruelty disguised as jokes, the way they talked about women like they were commodities to be rated and ranked. He'd never said anything, had told himself it wasn't his business, that keeping his head down and his paycheck steady was more important than challenging workplace assholes. But now, looking at this woman who was clearly gathering her courage for something that was supposed to be a setup in every sense of the word, his silence felt like complicity. The woman's eyes found his across the room, and something flickered in her expression. A question, maybe, or recognition of the awkwardness they were both feeling. Before he could think better of it, Ethan raised his hand in a small wave. Her face transformed. Just for a second, genuine warmth broke through the careful composure, and she smiled at him with such open relief that something in his chest cracked a little. He was moving toward her table before he fully decided to, aware of Marcus and Derek's attention sharpening in his peripheral vision, aware that he was probably walking into exactly the kind of humiliation they'd orchestrated. But the woman was already half standing, smoothing her sweater, and backing out now would make everything worse. "Hi," he said when he reached her table, and his voice came out rougher than he'd intended. "I'm Ethan." "Are you—" "Lena," she said quickly, extending her hand. "Lena Brooks." "Yes." "Hi. You're—" "Yes. Hi." Her handshake was firm but brief, and when she sat back down, he noticed the way her fingers immediately went to the handle of her coffee cup, like she needed something to hold on to. He slid into the seat across from her, hyper-aware of Marcus and Derek watching from their corner, phones definitely recording now. "I'm sorry I'm right on time," Lena said with a nervous laugh. "I have this thing about being late. Drives my sister crazy because I usually show up like 15 minutes early and then sit in my car trying to time it perfectly so I'm not weirdly early, but also not late. And—" She stopped herself, closing her eyes briefly. "Sorry, I'm rambling. I do that when I'm nervous." "Don't apologize," Ethan said, and meant it. Her nervousness was endearing in a way he hadn't expected, honest in a way that made the whole situation feel less like a performance. "I've been standing outside for 10 minutes trying to convince myself to come in." "Really?" She looked genuinely surprised, like the idea that he might be nervous too hadn't occurred to her. "Really, I don't—" He gestured vaguely. "I don't do this. Haven't in a long time." "Me either." She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. "When Vanessa from work told me about this, I almost said no about 6 times. But she was so insistent, kept saying I needed to put myself out there, and I thought—" She shrugged. "I thought maybe she was right. Maybe it was time." Ethan felt that cold sensation in his stomach intensify. Vanessa from her work, Marcus from his. He'd bet anything they knew each other, had probably coordinated this whole thing. The question was whether Lena knew, or if she was as much in the dark as he'd been. "Can I ask you something?" he said before he could stop himself. Lena's expression shifted, became more guarded. "Okay. This friend of yours, Vanessa, what did she tell you about me?" A small line appeared between Lena's eyebrows. "Not much, actually, just that you were a nice guy, that you had a daughter, and that I should give you a chance." "Why?" "Because we're being set up in more ways than one," Ethan thought, but didn't say. Instead, he glanced toward the corner where Marcus and Derek were still watching, not even trying to hide it anymore. Lena followed his gaze, and he saw the moment she registered them. The way her shoulders tensed, the way her grip on her coffee cup tightened. "Do you know them?" she asked quietly. "I work with them. The guy on the left, Marcus, he's the one who set this up. Told me basically the same thing yours told you. Nice woman, give it a chance." He looked back at Lena, watched color rising in her cheeks as she processed what that meant. "They're recording us." The words hung between them like a detonation. Lena's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, understanding, humiliation, anger. She started to turn toward Marcus and Derek, but Ethan reached across the table without thinking, his hand stopping just short of touching hers. "Don't," he said softly. "Don't give them what they want." Lena's eyes snapped back to his, bright with something that might have been tears or might have been fury. "What they want is to watch us figure out we're a joke, that this whole thing is a setup so they can laugh at the pathetic single dad and the fat woman who were actually desperate enough to show up." The bluntness of it hit him like a physical blow. Not because it wasn't true. He could see the truth of it in Marcus's smirk, in the way Derek's phone was angled directly at their table, but because hearing her say it out loud, claim that narrative before he could, made him angry in a way he hadn't felt in years. "No," he said, and his voice came out harder than he'd intended. "What they want is to feel superior. They want to take two people they think they're better than and prove to themselves that their small, mean little worldview is correct. And the thing is," he leaned forward slightly, holding her gaze, "the thing is, they're not worth it. They're not worth your anger or your embarrassment or anything else. They're just not worth it." Lena stared at him, and in the stretch of silence between them, he could hear his own heart pounding. He'd never been good at speeches, never been the guy who knew what to say in moments like this. But something about her expression, the way she was looking at him like he'd said something that mattered, made him keep going. "I'm not here because I'm desperate," he said. "I'm here because I'm tired. I'm tired of being alone, and I'm tired of pretending that's a choice instead of what it became after my wife left. And maybe Marcus knew that. Maybe he saw it and thought it would be funny to use it, but that doesn't make it a joke. It just makes him an asshole." A laugh burst out of Lena, sharp and surprised, and she immediately covered her mouth with her hand. When she lowered it, there was a smile pulling at her lips despite everything. "I'm here because I convinced myself that maybe someone could look past," she gestured at herself, "all of this. That maybe Vanessa was actually being a friend instead of whatever this is." "There's nothing to look past," Ethan said, and watched her expression shudder slightly, like she'd heard that line before and knew it was bullshit. "I mean it. I look at you and I see someone who showed up even though you were nervous, someone who rambles when they're anxious, someone who times their arrival so carefully they end up sitting in their car for 15 minutes. That's not nothing. That's honest." Lena's eyes searched his face like she was trying to figure out if he was real or just another version of the cruelty she'd expected. In the background, Ethan could hear Marcus and Derek's laughter floating across the cafe, harsh and congratulatory. Other patrons were starting to notice, glancing toward the corner booth and then back at them with expressions ranging from curiosity to discomfort. "They're going to post this," Lena said quietly. "Whatever happens next, they're going to post it online and tag people we know and turn it into—" "Let them." The words came out before Ethan fully formed the thought, but once he said them, he knew they were right. "Let them post it. Let them show everyone exactly who they are. Because here's the thing. They think this is humiliating for us, but it's not. It's just sad for them." "You really believe that?" Lena asked, and there was something fragile in the question, like she wanted to believe it too, but didn't know how. Ethan thought about Sophie, about the way she'd asked him last week why people were mean sometimes, about how he'd struggled to explain that hurt people, that cruelty was often just pain turned outward. He thought about all the times he'd kept his head down in the break room while Marcus and Derek held court, all the times he'd chosen peace over principle. "I'm choosing to believe it," he said finally. "Right now, in this moment, I'm choosing to believe that their opinion doesn't matter and that you and I can sit here and have coffee like two normal people who are trying to figure out if they like each other. And if that pisses them off, if that ruins their little game, then good." Something shifted in Lena's expression, a kind of settling that seemed to start in her shoulders and work its way through her whole body. She picked up her coffee cup, took a long sip, and when she set it back down, there was steel in her eyes. "Okay," she said. "Okay, let's do that. Let's have coffee. Let's talk like normal people." She paused, then added with a slight smile, "Even though this is probably the least normal first date in history." "Second date will be better," Ethan said, and then immediately wanted to take it back because who said there'd be a second date? They'd been sitting here for all of 5 minutes, and half of that had been about workplace assholes, but Lena's smile widened. "Promise?" "Promise." A barista appeared at their table, young and clearly uncomfortable with the weird energy in the room. "Can I get you folks anything?" "Another coffee," Lena said, and she glanced at Ethan. "Are you hungry? Because I stress-ate a granola bar in my car, and now I'm starving, which is absolutely not how I planned to start this, but—" "Pancakes," Ethan said to the barista. "2 orders, and bacon, lots of bacon." "Perfect," Lena said, and when the barista left, she leaned back in her chair with something that looked almost like relief. Okay, so normal first date conversation. You have a daughter? Sophie, she's 5, currently obsessed with dinosaurs and refuses to believe that T-Rex couldn't actually roar because we've never heard one, so how do we really know? He felt his face relax into the expression it always took when he talked about his daughter, the one that was pure, unguarded love. She's everything. That's beautiful, Lena said softly. What's it like, being a single parent? Ethan considered the question, trying to find words for something he usually kept locked down tight. Terrifying. Exhausting. The best thing I've ever done and the hardest thing I'll ever do. Every day I'm convinced I'm screwing it up, and then she'll do something like bring me a drawing she made at school or tell me I'm her best friend, and I think maybe I'm getting some of it right. I think if you're that worried about screwing it up, you're probably doing better than you think. That's what her kindergarten teacher says, right before she tells me Sophie needs to work on her volume control. He smiled. What about you? What's your story? Lena's fingers traced the rim of her coffee cup, and Ethan watched her decide how much to share. I'm a librarian, she said finally. At the main branch downtown, I organize events, help with literacy programs, spend most of my day surrounded by books and people who love books, which is basically my dream job. I live with my sister and her husband because rent in this city is insane, and they have a spare room. She paused. I'm pretty boring, actually, says the woman who works with books all day. I bet you've got stories. Different kind of stories. But she was smiling now, more relaxed. Although there was this one time a guy tried to return a book he'd checked out in 1987, genuinely didn't understand why we couldn't just let him renew it. What happened? I waived the fine. It was like $800 at that point, which was more than the book was worth. He cried. Actually cried. Said his wife had been the one who checked it out, and she'd passed away years ago, and he'd been holding on to it because it was one of the last things she'd touched. Lena's expression went soft. Sometimes the rules matter less than the people. You know? Ethan did know. He knew exactly what she meant, and the fact that she'd made that choice, had seen a person instead of a policy, told him more about who she was than any carefully curated dating profile could have. Their food arrived, and for a few minutes they ate in comfortable silence. Ethan couldn't remember the last time he'd had breakfast out that wasn't a hurried drive-through with Sophie in the back seat. There was something almost luxurious about sitting in a warm cafe on a Saturday morning, eating pancakes that someone else had made, talking to a woman who made him feel something other than tired. He'd almost forgotten about Marcus and Derek when Lena's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen and her expression went carefully neutral in a way that made Ethan's stomach clench. What is it? Text from Vanessa. She wants to know how it's going. Lena set her phone face down. She's probably getting updates from your coworkers. Do you want to leave? Ethan asked. We can go somewhere else. Finish this conversation somewhere they can't. No. Lena's voice was firm. No, I don't want to leave. I want to sit here and eat these pancakes and keep talking to you, and I want them to see that their little game didn't work the way they thought it would. Ethan felt something warm spread through his chest, something that felt dangerously close to admiration. You're tougher than I am. I've had practice. She took a bite of pancake, chewed thoughtfully. You know what the worst part is? It's not even surprising. Like, I walked in here half expecting something to go wrong because things usually do. And now that it has, there's this weird relief because at least I know where I stand. That's... Ethan struggled for words. That's awful. You shouldn't have to expect that. But I do, because I've learned. Lena met his eyes. What about you? Did you expect this? No, he admitted. I expected awkward small talk and maybe some mutual discomfort, and then a polite excuse about needing to get back to my daughter. I didn't expect... He gestured vaguely at the cafe around them. Any of this. The pancakes are good, though, Lena said, and it took him a second to realize she was joking, trying to lighten the moment. Best post-humiliation pancakes I've ever had. She laughed, a real laugh that made her eyes crinkle at the corners, and Ethan found himself laughing too. In the corner, he could see Marcus and Derek exchanging confused glances like they couldn't figure out why their targets were enjoying themselves. Can I tell you something? Lena asked, and her voice had gone quieter, more serious. Yeah. When Vanessa first described you, she emphasized that you were a single dad, like that was supposed to be the selling point. He's responsible, he's stable, he's not looking for games. And I remember thinking, is that really what it comes down to? That the best I can hope for is someone who sees me as a safe, practical choice? Ethan felt anger flare again, not at Lana, but at the entire situation that had taught her to think of herself that way. That's not what I see. What do you see? It was a challenge and an invitation all at once, and Ethan knew his answer mattered more than almost anything else he could say. He set down his fork, gave her his full attention. I see someone who showed up even though it was scary. Someone who's honest about being nervous instead of pretending to have it all together. Someone who chooses kindness over policy when it matters. Someone who makes me laugh when I really needed to laugh. He paused. I see someone I'd like to get to know better, if you'll let me. Lena's eyes had gone shiny, and she blinked rapidly, like she was trying not to cry in the middle of a cafe. I don't know why you're being nice to me. I'm not being nice, I'm being honest. There's a difference. Is there? She smiled, but it was wobbly around the edges. Most people can't tell the difference anymore. Then most people are missing out. They sat there for a long moment, just looking at each other across a small table in a crowded cafe, and Ethan felt something slot into place. Not love. It was way too early for that, and he'd learned enough to be wary of instant connections, but possibility. The sense that maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something real. His phone buzzed. Then again. Then 3 more times in rapid succession. He pulled it out and his jaw clenched as he scrolled through the messages. Marcus. Dude, how's it going? Marcus. You still there? Marcus. Don't forget we got video LOL. Derek. This is gold. Marcus. Seriously though, you can bail if you want. We got enough footage. Ethan looked up to find Lena watching him with an expression that was trying very hard to be neutral. Let me guess. They want to know if I'm ready to bail. He turned his phone so she could see the messages, watched her mouth tighten as she read them. Are you? Not even a little bit. He typed out a response, his fingers moving before his brain could talk him out of it. Actually having a great time. You guys should try genuine human connection sometime. Might be less pathetic than whatever this is. He sent it and put his phone face down on the table. Lena was staring at him with something like awe. You didn't have to do that. Yeah, I did. I'm done being polite to people who don't deserve it. I'm done letting them think their cruelty is somehow acceptable because nobody calls them on it. He felt his voice rising slightly and forced himself to modulate. Sorry, I should have said something a long time ago about the way they talk in the break room, about all of it. Why didn't you? Ethan thought about Sophie's little shoes by the door, about the stack of medical bills he was still paying off from her bout with pneumonia last year, about the careful math he did every month to make sure there was enough. Because I was scared. Because I needed the job and didn't want to make waves. Because it was easier to keep my head down and tell myself it wasn't my problem. And now? Now I'm sitting across from someone they thought would be a joke, and she's the most real person I've talked to in months. So yeah, now it's my problem. Now I care. Lena reached across the table and took his hand, just picked it up like it was the most natural thing in the world, and held it, her fingers warm against his. Thank you. For what? For showing up, for staying, for... She squeezed his hand. For seeing me. Ethan squeezed back, and they sat like that for a moment while the cafe moved around them, other people's conversations washing over them like white noise. In his peripheral vision, he could see Marcus and Derek getting up from their booth, phones away now, expressions frustrated. They were leaving, probably off to post their footage and text their friends and try to salvage something funny from a setup that had completely backfired. Let them, Ethan thought. Let them do their worst. It didn't matter anymore. So, Lena said eventually, still holding his hand, tell me about these dinosaurs Sophie's obsessed with. I might have some books at the library that would blow her mind. And just like that, they were back in it. A normal conversation between two people who were trying to figure out if this thing between them might be something worth pursuing. Ethan found himself talking about Sophie's current fixation on velociraptors, about how she'd decided she was going to be a paleontologist when she grew up, even though she couldn't pronounce it, about the way she narrated their walks home from kindergarten with facts about prehistoric life. Lena listened with the kind of attention that told him she was genuinely interested, asking questions that showed she was actually paying attention instead of just waiting for her turn to talk. She told him about the library's science program for kids, about how they did these weekend workshops that parents could attend with their children, about a field trip to the Natural History Museum she was helping organize. Sophie would lose her mind, Ethan said. She's never been to a museum. I keep meaning to take her, but life gets in the way, Lena finished. I get it. But seriously, if you want to bring her to one of the workshops, I can make sure you're on the list. They fill up fast, but she smiled. I know people. You do that? Of course. I love when kids get excited about learning. It's literally the best part of my job. She paused, then added more quietly, and I'd like to meet her. If we get to that point, I'd like that too. Ethan realized he meant it completely. The thought of Lena meeting Sophie, of the two of them in the same room, didn't make him anxious the way it usually did when he thought about introducing his daughter to someone new. It felt right. Easy. They talked for another hour, pancakes long finished, coffee cups refilled twice. Lena told him about growing up with three sisters, about how her mother had raised them alone after their father left, about how she'd learned early that taking up space was something she'd have to fight for. Ethan shared pieces of his own story, his marriage to Rachel, the slow dissolution of something that had never been as solid as he'd thought, the moment she'd told him she couldn't do it anymore and he'd felt relief more than grief. Does Sophie see her? Lena asked gently. No. Rachel sends a birthday card sometimes, but that's it. She has a whole new life in California. New husband, new job, new everything. Sophie doesn't remember her, which Rachel thinks is a gift, but I think is... He shook his head. I don't know what I think. Some days I'm angry on Sophie's behalf. Some days I'm just grateful we don't have to navigate shared custody. You're allowed to feel all of it, Lena said. Feelings aren't logical. They just are. It was such a simple observation, but it hit Ethan with unexpected force. When was the last time someone had given him permission to feel complicated things? When was the last time he'd given himself that permission? Around them, the cafe had shifted into its late morning rhythm. The breakfast crowd had thinned out, replaced by people with laptops and books, settling in for long stretches of work or study. The barista who'd served them earlier caught Ethan's eye and smiled, a real smile that said she'd noticed them sitting here talking for hours and approved. Ethan's phone buzzed again, but this time it was a reminder he'd set for himself. I have to pick up Sophie in an hour, he said reluctantly. She's at a play date with a friend from school. I should go anyway, Lena said, but she didn't move to get up. I told my sister I'd help her with some things around the house. Neither of them moved. They sat there looking at each other across the table, and Ethan felt the weight of the moment. This was where it would either continue or end, where they'd exchange numbers or make polite excuses, where something that had started as a cruel joke would either transform into possibility or fade into just another story about dodging a bullet. Can I see you again? Ethan asked, and his heart was doing that uncomfortable thing again. Not because I feel obligated or because I'm trying to prove something to those assholes, but because I want to. Because this has been really good. Lena's smile was soft and genuine and a little bit amazed. Yes, I'd really like that. They exchanged numbers, fingers fumbling slightly with phones, both of them suddenly awkward in a way that felt sweet instead of painful. As they stood to leave, Ethan hesitated, then said, I'm glad Marcus and Derek are idiots. If they weren't, we might never have met. Lena laughed. That's probably the most generous interpretation of this situation possible. I'm choosing to believe the best version of the story, Ethan said. The one where two people met and actually liked each other, and everything else is just noise. They walked out of the cafe together into the cool October morning that had turned crisp and bright. On the sidewalk, they paused, neither quite ready to go their separate ways. Text me when you get home, Ethan said, so I know you made it safely. That's very chivalrous of you, Lena said, but she was smiling. I'm a dad. I worry about people making it home safely. It's basically my job now. Then, yes, I'll text you. And you text me when you pick up Sophie? Deal. They stood there a moment longer, and then Lena did something that surprised them both. She stepped forward and hugged him. It was brief but warm, her arms around his shoulders, her head tucked just under his chin. Ethan wrapped his arms around her and held on, feeling the solid reality of her, the way she fit against him like maybe this wasn't such a crazy idea after all. When they pulled apart, Lena was blushing. Sorry, I'm a hugger. Should have asked first. Don't apologize, Ethan said. Best hug I've had in... He calculated. 5 years? Possibly longer. That's sad. It was. Past tense. Because now I've had this one. Lena's blush deepened, but she was grinning. You're kind of smooth when you want to be. I have no idea what I'm doing, Ethan admitted, but I'm glad it's working. They said goodbye one more time, actual goodbye this time, and Ethan watched her walk to her car, a sensible blue sedan that fit everything he'd learned about her. She gave him a little wave before getting in, and he waved back, feeling like a teenager and not even caring. His phone buzzed as he walked to his own car. Lena, made it safely to my car, see? I'm very responsible. Ethan, noted. Talk soon? Lena, definitely. He drove to pick up Sophie with something light in his chest, something that felt dangerously close to hope. When he pulled up to the house where the playdate was, Sophie came running out with her coat half on and her backpack trailing behind her, face lit up with the uncomplicated joy that was his favorite thing in the world. Daddy, we played veterinarian and I fixed all the stuffed animals and Mrs. Chen said I was very gentle with them. That's great, sweetheart. He helped her with her coat, buckled her into her car seat, and caught Mrs. Chen's eye. The woman smiled and gave him a little thumbs up, which meant Sophie had been well behaved and hadn't accidentally broken anything. In the rearview mirror, Sophie was already launching into a detailed account of every animal she'd treated and what had been wrong with them. Ethan let her talk, making appropriate sounds of interest while his mind drifted back to the cafe, to Lena's smile, to the feeling of possibility he hadn't let himself feel in so long. Daddy, you're not listening, Sophie announced with the brutal honesty of 5-year-olds everywhere. I am listening. You fixed Mr. Hoppy's broken ear. That was 5 minutes ago. I'm talking about lunch now. Can we have grilled cheese? Sure, baby. Grilled cheese it is. At home, while Sophie set up her dinosaurs for some elaborate game that seemed to involve a T-Rex running a hospital, Ethan made lunch and checked his phone more times than he wanted to admit. No new messages from Lena, but that was fine, normal even. They'd just met. He couldn't expect... His phone buzzed. Lena. Is it weird that I'm already looking forward to seeing you again? Ethan's face split into a grin that made Sophie look up from her dinosaurs. Why are you smiling like that? No reason, just, good morning? It's lunchtime, Daddy. You're right, good lunchtime. Sophie rolled her eyes in a perfect imitation of every exasperated adult she'd ever seen and went back to her dinosaurs. Ethan typed out his response, deleted it, typed it again. Ethan, not weird at all, same here. And that was how it started. Not with fireworks or grand gestures, but with pancakes and honesty and the choice to see each other clearly instead of through the lens of other people's cruelty. It started with a woman who'd shown up expecting the worst, and a man who'd decided that maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop protecting himself from possibility. It started exactly the way the best things do. Unexpectedly, imperfectly, and with the simple decision to try. The following Tuesday, Ethan found himself staring at his phone during his lunch break, reading and rereading the text conversation he'd been having with Lena over the past 3 days. Nothing earth-shattering, just small exchanges about their days, photos she'd sent of books she thought Sophie might like, a terrible joke he'd shared that had made her respond with a string of laughing emojis. But every ping of his phone made something warm unfold in his chest, and he'd caught himself smiling at nothing enough times that even his cubicle neighbor had noticed. You seeing someone? Janet from data entry had asked that morning, peering over the divider with undisguised curiosity. Maybe. Early days. Good for you, hun. You deserve something nice. He'd almost told her about the setup, about Marcus and Derek's little game, but decided against it. The story belonged to him and Lena, not to office gossip. Besides, Marcus had been notably quiet since Saturday, avoiding eye contact in the break room and leaving meetings early. Ethan suspected the video hadn't gotten the reaction they'd hoped for. Hard to make something humiliating when the subjects clearly liked each other. His phone buzzed. Lena. Random question, what's Sophie's favorite color? I'm at a bookstore and I found something but want to make sure I'm not completely off base. Ethan. Purple. Specifically purple like grapes, not purple like eggplant, according to her very firm opinion on the matter. Lena. Perfect. Also, that's adorable. Ethan. She has opinions on everything. Last week we had a 15-minute debate about whether clouds are made of cotton candy. Lena. What was her argument? Ethan. That they look like cotton candy, so they probably taste like it too, and the only way to know for sure is to go up in an airplane and try one. Lena. I mean, that's solid scientific reasoning. Ethan. That's what I told her teacher when Sophie announced to the class that her daddy said she could eat clouds. Lena. Oh no. Ethan. Oh yes. I got a very concerned email. He could practically hear her laughing, and the image made him smile so wide that he had to duck his head to hide it from anyone passing by his cubicle. Lena. Okay, so I may have bought her a book, and also a stuffed dinosaur that's purple. Is that okay? I don't want to overstep. Ethan felt something catch in his throat. The thoughtfulness of it, the fact that she'd been thinking about Sophie at all, hit him harder than he'd expected. Ethan. That's more than okay. That's incredibly sweet. She's going to lose her mind. Lena. I was thinking, if you're free this weekend, maybe we could meet at the park. I could give them to her then. No pressure, though. I know introducing someone new is a big deal. Ethan stared at the message for a long moment. It was a big deal. He'd been careful about who he let into Sophie's life, protective in a way that bordered on paranoid. Rachel's departure had taught him that people could leave, that Sophie's heart was something he needed to guard carefully. But something about Lena felt different, steady, real. Ethan. Saturday afternoon? There's a playground near the library with a good dinosaur-themed play structure. Sophie loves it. Lena. Perfect. 2 p.m.? Ethan. It's a date. Well, a date with a 5-year-old chaperone. Lena. The best kind. That Saturday, Ethan spent an embarrassing amount of time trying to figure out what to wear to a playground. He finally settled on jeans and a flannel shirt, then changed his mind twice before Sophie wandered into his room and announced, Daddy, you look fine. Can we go now? How do you know where we're going? He asked, pulling on his sneakers. You've been smiley all week, and you keep checking your phone, and you did your hair different. She tilted her head, studying him with the unnerving perceptiveness of small children. Are we meeting someone? Ethan sat down on the edge of his bed so they were closer to eye level. Yeah, we are. Remember I told you I had coffee with someone last weekend? The lady from the library? Her name is Lena. And yes, the lady from the library. She's going to meet us at the park today. Is that okay with you? Sophie considered this with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice. Is she nice? Very nice. She picked out some presents for you. I like her already, Sophie declared. Can we go now? The drive to the park took 15 minutes, and Ethan spent most of it listening to Sophie speculate about what the presents might be while his stomach did nervous flips. He was introducing his daughter to someone he'd known for less than a week. This was either the most natural thing in the world or completely insane, and he wasn't sure which. Lena was already there when they arrived, sitting on a bench near the playground with a canvas bag at her feet. She stood when she saw them, and Ethan noticed she'd worn a deep purple sweater that made him wonder if the color choice was intentional. She looked nervous, too, her hands fidgeting with the strap of her bag, and somehow that made him feel better. Hi, she said as they approached, and her eyes went to Sophie with an expression of such genuine warmth that Ethan felt his anxiety ease slightly. Hi, Ethan said. Lena, this is Sophie. Sophie, this is Miss Lena. Sophie, who could be shy around new people, surprised him by stepping forward and extending her hand just like he'd taught her. It's nice to meet you. Daddy says you work with books. Lena shook her hand solemnly. I do, and I hear you're very interested in dinosaurs. I'm going to be a paleontologist when I grow up. Do you know what that is? Someone who studies dinosaur fossils. That's a really cool job. Sophie beamed, and Ethan could see her shyness evaporating in real time. Most people don't know what it is. They think I mean pediatrician. Well, I work with lots of books about dinosaurs, so I've learned a few things. Lena glanced at Ethan, a question in her eyes, and he nodded. She reached into her bag and pulled out a wrapped package. I brought you something. I hope you like it. Sophie's eyes went wide. She looked at Ethan for permission, and at his nod, she carefully took the package and began unwrapping it with the kind of methodical precision that made wrapping paper last forever. When the book emerged, a large illustrated guide to prehistoric creatures, Sophie actually gasped. This is the one I wanted. Daddy, look, it's the one from the library that was always checked out. I know, Lena said softly. I'm the one who kept track of who had it. Figured you should have your own copy. Sophie clutched the book to her chest, then seemed to remember there was more. The stuffed dinosaur came out next, a plush purple velociraptor with kind eyes and soft scales. Sophie's face transformed into pure joy. She's perfect. Can I name her? Of course, Lena said. She's yours. Thank you, Miss Lena. Sophie threw her arms around Lena's legs in an impulsive hug that made Lena's expression go soft and surprised. When Sophie pulled back, she was already examining her new treasures with intense focus. Daddy, can I go show the other kids? Stay where I can see you, Ethan said, and Sophie was off, running toward a group of children near the swings with her dinosaur held high. Ethan turned to Lena, who was watching Sophie with a small smile. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. Is it okay? I wasn't trying to. I know it's early, and I don't want to presume it's perfect, Ethan interrupted gently. She loves them. And you're really good with her. I work with kids all the time, but I was nervous anyway. Lena laughed a little shakily. Is that crazy? Being nervous to meet a 5-year-old? She's not just any 5-year-old. She's my 5-year-old. So no, it's not crazy. It matters that you care enough to be nervous. They sat down on the bench together, close enough that their shoulders almost touched, and watched Sophie integrate herself into a game of tag with the other children. The autumn air was cool but pleasant, carrying the smell of fallen leaves and the distant promise of winter. She looks like you, Lena observed. Same eyes, same way of concentrating on things. She's better than me in every way that counts, braver, kinder, more certain about what she wants. She's lucky to have you. Ethan shook his head. I'm the lucky one. After Rachel left, Sophie was the reason I got up every morning, the reason I kept going. Some days she still is. Lena's hand found his on the bench, her fingers threading through his like it was the most natural thing in the world. Come. Can I ask what happened? You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. Ethan looked at their joined hands, then at Sophie, who was now explaining something very seriously to a boy about her age. Rachel and I got married young. Too young, probably. We met in college, and it was intense and exciting, and we thought that was enough. But when Sophie came, it was hard. Rachel had postpartum depression, and I didn't know how to help her. I was working long hours trying to keep us afloat financially, and she was home alone with a baby she couldn't bond with. He paused, the memories sharp even after all this time. She tried. I want to be clear about that. She really tried. But one day I came home and she'd packed a bag. She said she couldn't do it anymore, that every time she looked at Sophie, she felt like she was drowning. She left that night, filed for divorce 3 weeks later, signed away custody without a fight. Ethan. Lena's voice was soft with sympathy. The thing is, I was relieved. How messed up is that? My wife left our daughter and part of me was just relieved. Because at least then I knew what I was dealing with. At least then I could stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. That's not messed up, that's survival. They sat in silence for a moment, and then Lena said, My mom left too. Different situation, but I understand what it's like to be the one left behind. I was 12. One day she just didn't come home from work. We found out later she'd moved to Atlanta with a guy she'd been seeing, left my dad with 4 daughters and no explanation. I'm sorry. It teaches you things, doesn't it? about who you can trust, about how quickly everything can fall apart. She squeezed his hand, but also about resilience, about building something new from what's left. Ethan looked at her, this woman who understood in a way most people couldn't, and felt something settle deep in his chest. I'm really glad Marcus is an idiot. Lena laughed, and the sound was bright and genuine. You know what's funny? Vanessa came up to me at work on Monday, all concerned, asking if I was okay, like she was expecting me to be devastated or something. And when I told her I was seeing you again, she looked so confused. What did you tell her? That sometimes the joke's on the people trying to make one, that she should try being genuine sometime instead of whatever that was. Lena's smile turned sharp. She didn't like that much. Good, she shouldn't. Ethan watched Sophie attempt a cartwheel and land in a giggling heap. I told Marcus to lose my number, told him I didn't want to associate with people who thought cruelty was entertainment. How'd he take it? About as well as you'd expect. Started to get defensive, then realized I wasn't backing down and just walked away. HR might be getting a call from me next week. Really? Really? I'm done letting that kind of thing slide. Sophie's going to grow up and have to deal with enough cruelty in the world. Least I can do is not model accepting it as normal. Lena's expression went soft. You're a good dad. I'm trying to be. Some days I feel like I'm just making it up as I go. Isn't that what all parents do? Before Ethan could answer, Sophie came running back, her cheeks flushed with exertion and her new dinosaur tucked under one arm. Miss Lena, do you want to see me on the swings? I can go really high. I would love to, Lena said, standing up. Sophie grabbed her hand without hesitation, tugging her toward the playground, and Ethan followed behind, watching them together. Lena pushed Sophie on the swings, and Sophie chattered nonstop about velociraptors and the upcoming school science fair, and how her friend Emma had lost a tooth that morning. Lena listened with the same genuine attention she'd given Ethan at the cafe, asking questions that showed she was actually interested, laughing at Sophie's jokes even when they didn't quite make sense. Watching them, Ethan felt a strange mixture of emotions, hope and fear tangled together so tightly he couldn't separate them. Hope that this could be something real, something lasting. Fear that he was setting Sophie up for loss, that he was moving too fast, that he was going to screw this up somehow. Higher, Miss Lena, Sophie called out, and Lena pushed harder, sending Sophie soaring with delighted shrieks. After the swings, Sophie wanted to show Lena her favorite climbing structure, then the tunnel slide, then the spinning platform that made Ethan vaguely nauseous just watching. Lena game for all of it, climbing and sliding and spinning with an enthusiasm that made other parents smile. She's wonderful, a woman said to Ethan at one point, nodding toward where Lena was helping Sophie across the monkey bars. Your wife. Oh, we're not, Ethan started, then stopped. Because what were they exactly? People who'd had coffee once and were now at a playground together? People who texted every day and thought about each other more than was probably reasonable after knowing each other for less than a week? She's wonderful, he agreed instead. Eventually, Sophie's energy began to flag. She climbed into Ethan's lap on the bench, her dinosaur clutched to her chest, and announced, I'm hungry. We should probably head home, Ethan said, looking at Lena apologetically. Actually, Lena said, and there was nervousness in her voice again. I packed a picnic. If you're interested, there's a good spot near the pond. Sophie perked up immediately. Can we, Daddy? Please? Are you sure? Ethan asked Lena. You've already done so much. I want to. I made sandwiches and everything. It would be a shame to let them go to waste. They walked to the pond together, Sophie between them holding both their hands and swinging her arms dramatically. Lena had indeed packed a full picnic, sandwiches, fruit, chips, juice boxes for Sophie, and iced tea for the adults. They spread out a blanket under a large oak tree and ate, while Sophie provided running commentary on the ducks paddling across the water. Did you know ducks can sleep with one eye open? Sophie informed them seriously. It's so they can watch for predators. I did know that, Lena said. Did you know some dinosaurs might have had feathers? Sophie's eyes went wide. Like birds? Birds are actually descended from dinosaurs, so in a way, every time you see a bird, you're seeing a little piece of prehistoric history. That's so cool. Sophie turned to Ethan. Daddy, did you know that? I did, but Miss Lena explained it better than I could have. They talked about dinosaurs and birds and evolution, Lena explaining concepts in ways that made sense to a 5-year-old without talking down to her. Ethan found himself watching more than participating, content to observe this easy rapport developing between two of the most important people in his life. When Sophie asked if she could go look at the ducks more closely, Ethan walked with her to the pond's edge while Lena packed up the picnic supplies. Sophie squatted down, examining the water with intense concentration. I like her, Daddy, she said quietly. Yeah, I'm glad. She's nice, and she knows about dinosaurs, and she pushes good on the swings. Sophie looked up at him with those serious eyes that always made her seem older than 5. Is she going to be your girlfriend? Ethan crouched down beside her, trying to figure out how to answer honestly without making promises he wasn't sure he could keep. I like her a lot, but we're still getting to know each other. Is it okay with you if she comes around sometimes? Sophie nodded thoughtfully. Emma's dad has a girlfriend. She comes to Emma's soccer games. How does Emma feel about that? She says it's okay. Her girlfriend brings good snacks. Sophie paused. Does Miss Lena bring good snacks? The best snacks, Ethan confirmed solemnly. Then it's okay with me. When they returned to the blanket, Lena had packed everything away and was sitting with her knees pulled up, watching them approach with an expression Ethan couldn't quite read. Everything okay? He asked. Yeah, this is really nice. Thank you for letting me be part of it. Thank you for the picnic and the presents and everything. Sophie, oblivious to the weight of the moment, climbed into Lena's lap like it was the most natural thing in the world. Miss Lena, will you come to my school science fair? It's in 2 weeks and I'm doing a project about velociraptors. Lena's eyes met Ethan's over Sophie's head, asking permission. At his small nod, she said, I would be honored to come to your science fair. Yes. Sophie hugged her, then scrambled up. Can I go see the ducks one more time? 5 more minutes, Ethan said, and Sophie ran off toward the pond with her characteristic boundless energy. I'm sorry, Ethan said. She's very enthusiastic when she likes someone. Don't apologize. I love it. Ethan, she's amazing. She is, and she likes you, that's huge. Sophie's pretty cautious around new people usually. Maybe she inherited her dad's ability to see people clearly, or maybe you're just easy to like. They sat there in comfortable silence, watching Sophie chase ducks that were far too fast for her. The sun was starting to sink lower in the sky, casting everything in that golden autumn light that made the world feel softer, gentler. I don't want this day to end, Lena said quietly. Then let's not let it. Come back to our place for dinner. Nothing fancy, probably just spaghetti or something, but I would love that. The drive to Ethan's apartment building felt significant somehow, like he was crossing some invisible threshold by bringing Lena into his actual home. Sophie chattered from the back seat about the ducks and her new dinosaur, which she'd named Patricia, for reasons Ethan didn't fully understand but accepted without question. His apartment was small, cluttered with the evidence of life with a 5-year-old, drawings on the fridge, toys in corners, tiny shoes by the door. Ethan felt a flash of self-consciousness as he let them in, seeing it through Lena's eyes. It wasn't much. The furniture was mismatched, the walls needed painting, and there was definitely a juice stain on the couch cushion that he kept meaning to clean. But Lena looked around with an expression of warmth, taking in the photos on the walls. Sophie at various ages, Sophie's artwork prominently displayed, a few shots of Ethan and Sophie together. This is perfect, she said. It's a home. Sophie gave Lena a tour that consisted mostly of showing her every single toy she owned and providing detailed backstories for her stuffed animals. Lena listened to all of it with patient attention, and Ethan started dinner in the kitchen, listening to their voices drift in from the living room. This was what he'd been missing, he realized. Not romance necessarily, though that was part of it. But this, the sound of Sophie laughing with someone who wasn't him, the feeling of another adult presence in the space they'd carved out together, the simple domestic rhythm of making dinner while people he cared about talked in the next room. Can I help? Lena appeared in the kitchen doorway. You can keep me company. Sophie's good at entertaining herself once she gets going. Lena leaned against the counter, watching him work. You're really good at this. At making spaghetti, it's not exactly gourmet cooking. At all of it. Parenting, making Sophie feel safe and loved, creating a home, you should be proud of yourself. Ethan felt his throat tighten. Some days I feel like I'm barely holding it together. That's called being human. Being a parent, caring enough to worry about whether you're doing it right. They fell into an easy rhythm, Lena setting the table while Ethan finished cooking, both of them moving around the small kitchen like they'd done this 100 times before. Sophie appeared periodically to report on important developments in her playworld, and each time, Lena gave her the same genuine attention. Dinner was chaotic in the way meals with 5-year-olds always were. Sophie told elaborate stories between bites, insisted on demonstrating how velociraptors probably ate their food, and spilled juice that Lena cleaned up without making it a big deal. After, while Ethan did dishes, Lena and Sophie played a complicated game involving dinosaurs and a cardboard castle. Watching them through the kitchen doorway, Ethan felt something shift into place. This wasn't just possibility anymore. This was real. A woman sitting cross-legged on his living room floor, roaring like a T-Rex to make his daughter giggle, fitting into their life like she'd always been meant to be there. Bedtime was the next test, and Sophie surprised him again by asking if Miss Lena could read her bedtime story. Ethan started to make excuses, to give Lena an out, but Lena was already saying yes. He listened from the hallway as Lena read the new dinosaur book in different voices for different creatures. Sophie's delighted laughter punctuating the story. When the book ended, he heard Sophie say, "Miss Lena, will you come back?" "If your dad says it's okay, I'd like to come back very much." "Good, because I like you. You're nice and you know about dinosaurs and you don't talk to me like I'm a baby." "That's because you're not a baby. You're a very smart girl who's going to be a paleontologist. Can you teach me more about dinosaurs?" "Absolutely. As many as you want to learn about." When Lena emerged from Sophie's room, pulling the door mostly closed behind her, there were tears in her eyes. "She's already asleep," Lena said softly. Went down mid-sentence about how Patricia the velociraptor was going to sleep on her pillow. They moved to the living room, settling on the couch with careful distance between them that felt more significant than if they'd sat close together. "Thank you," Ethan said, "for today. For being so good with her. For all of it. I should be thanking you for trusting me with her. I know that's not a small thing." "It's not, but it felt right. You felt right." Lena turned to face him fully, tucking one leg under her. "Can I ask you something? And I want you to be completely honest." "Okay. Are we moving too fast? Because it feels fast. We met a week ago under the worst possible circumstances, and now I'm reading bedtime stories to your daughter and eating dinner in your apartment, and part of me is terrified that we're going to crash and burn because we skipped all the normal steps." Ethan considered the question carefully, trying to honor her honesty with his own. "Yeah, it's fast. Faster than I've moved with anyone since Rachel. Faster than I ever thought I would move again. But it doesn't feel wrong. It feels..." He struggled for the right words. "It feels like we're not building something from scratch. Like we recognize something in each other and we're just letting it unfold. That's how it feels to me too. Like I've known you longer than a week. Like this is just..." "Right," Ethan finished. They sat there looking at each other, and Ethan felt the pull between them. The inevitable gravity of two people who wanted the same thing. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull back, but she met him halfway. Their kiss was soft and tentative, a question more than a statement, and when they pulled apart, Lena was smiling. "I've wanted to do that since the cafe," she admitted. "Me too. But the timing felt wrong. Yeah, this feels better. Feels real." They kissed again, longer this time, and Ethan let himself sink into it, the warmth of her, the way she fit against him, the simple rightness of this moment after so many years of being alone. When they finally pulled apart, Lena said, "I should probably go. It's late, and you have Sophie and I don't want to..." "I know, but I don't want you to go." "Then walk me to my car and kiss me goodnight properly." They stood at her car for a long time, unwilling to say goodbye, stealing kisses between sentences. Finally, Lena pulled back with visible reluctance. "I'll text you when I get home." "Please do." "And Lena?" "Yeah?" "This week. Can I see you again? without Sophie? Just, just us? Her smile was brilliant in the streetlight. I'd really like that. Dinner? It's a date. He watched her drive away, then went back inside to his quiet apartment. Sophie's door was still cracked, and he peeked in to find her fast asleep with Patricia clutched in her arms. The dinosaur book was on her nightstand, and on impulse, Ethan pulled out his phone and took a picture. He sent it to Lena with the caption, "Thank you for making her so happy." Her response came before he even made it to his own bedroom. "Thank you for letting me." Sweet dreams, Ethan. He fell asleep that night with his phone on his chest, thinking about green sweaters and genuine laughter and the way Lena had looked sitting cross-legged on his living room floor. Thinking about possibility becoming reality, about jokes becoming something beautiful, about choosing to believe in good things even when the world gave you every reason not to. And for the first time in 5 years, he let himself hope without reservation. Let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something extraordinary. Their dinner date happened on a Thursday evening, and Ethan spent an embarrassing amount of time arranging childcare. He finally asked Mrs. Chen, the mother of Sophie's friend from the playdate, who'd been dropping hints about reciprocating for weeks. Sophie was thrilled at the prospect of another evening with her friend, and Mrs. Chen gave Ethan a knowing smile when he admitted he had plans. "About time," she said. "You're too young to be home every night. Go, have fun. Sophie will be fine." Ethan picked Lena up at 7 from the house she shared with her sister. It was a modest 2-story in a neighborhood that had seen better days but still maintained a kind of stubborn dignity. Lena came out before he could knock, wearing a dark red dress that made his brain short-circuit momentarily. "You look beautiful," he managed, and she smiled in a way that told him the nervousness he felt wasn't one-sided. "You clean up pretty well yourself." He'd agonized over where to take her, finally settling on a small Italian place that had been recommended by Janet at work. It wasn't fancy, but it was supposed to be good. And more importantly, it felt like the kind of place where they could actually talk without worrying about impressing anyone. The restaurant was warm and dimly lit, with checkered tablecloths and the smell of garlic and basil heavy in the air. They were seated at a corner table, intimate without being claustrophobic, and Ethan felt some of his nervousness ease as they settled in. "This is nice," Lena said, looking around. "Much better than our first date." The bar was pretty low. All I had to do was pick somewhere without hidden cameras. She laughed, and the sound made warmth spread through his chest. "Fair point, although I have to admit the pancakes were good. Best crisis pancakes I've ever had." They ordered wine, and when it arrived, Lena raised her glass. "To second chances. And third dates that aren't at playgrounds or in apartments with bedtime routines." "I'll drink to that." Ethan clinked his glass against hers. "Although I have to say, watching you play dinosaurs with Sophie was pretty great. She's easy to play with. Most kids are when you actually pay attention to them." Lena took a sip of her wine. "I see it at the library all the time. Parents who are physically present but mentally somewhere else. The kids know. They always know." "Is that why you became a librarian? To be present for kids?" "Partially. My mom, before she left, she used to take us to the library every Saturday. It was our special thing, just the 4 of us girls and her. She'd let us pick out whatever we wanted, never judged our choices, just let us discover what we loved." Lena's expression went distant. "After she left, the library became the place where she still existed, you know? Where I could remember her being good and present and interested in us. My dad couldn't afford much, but he made sure we always had library cards." Ethan reached across the table and took her hand. "I'm sorry you lost that." "I'm sorry Sophie lost her mom. At least I had mine for 12 years. Sophie won't remember Rachel at all. I go back and forth on whether that's a blessing or a curse. Some days I think it's better this way. She doesn't have to carry the memory of being left. Other days I think she deserves to know who her mother was, even if that knowledge comes with pain." "Do you talk to her about Rachel?" "Sometimes, when she asks. I try to be honest without being cruel. I tell her that her mom loved her but couldn't stay, that sometimes people's brains get sick in ways that make them leave even when they don't want to. I don't know if that's the right approach, but it's the best I've got." Their food arrived, providing a natural pause in the heavy conversation. Ethan had ordered chicken parmesan. Lena had gotten the seafood pasta, and they both dove in with the hunger of people who'd been too nervous to eat much during the day. "Oh my God," Lena said after her first bite. "This is incredible." Janet wasn't lying. This place is amazing. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes, and Ethan marveled at how comfortable it felt. No pressure to fill every second with conversation, no anxiety about awkward silences, just two people enjoying good food and each other's company. "Can I ask you something?" Lena said eventually, twirling pasta around her fork. "What made you say yes to the blind date? If Marcus and Derek are as bad as they seem, you must have known something was off." Ethan considered the question, trying to remember his headspace from 2 weeks ago. "Honestly, I was tired of being the guy everyone pitied. Tired of people looking at me like I was broken because I'm a single dad. Marcus pitched it as doing me a favor, and I wanted to believe that maybe someone actually saw me as worth setting up, not just as a charity case. That's not pathetic. That's human. It felt pathetic at the time. Still does sometimes. Like I was so desperate for validation that I walked right into an obvious setup." "We both did," Lena pointed out. "Vanessa's pitch was basically the same. You deserve someone who'll appreciate you. He's a nice guy. Just give it a chance." I wanted to believe her because the alternative was believing that nobody would actually choose to set me up without an agenda. "Their loss," Ethan said firmly. "Anyone who can't see how incredible you are isn't worth your time." Lena's eyes went bright and she blinked rapidly. "You can't just say things like that." "Why not?" "Because I'm not used to it. Because when you say it, I almost believe it." "You should believe it. It's true." She squeezed his hand, her thumb tracing patterns on his knuckles. "You're dangerous, Ethan Cole. You make me feel things I've spent years protecting myself from feeling." "Good. Feel them. I'm right here feeling them too, and it's terrifying, but I'd rather be terrified with you than safe and alone." The conversation shifted to lighter topics. Books they'd loved as kids, terrible movies they secretly enjoyed, the weirdest reference questions Lena had gotten at the library. She told him about the man who'd wanted books on training squirrels to do tricks, the teenager who'd asked if the library had any spells that actually worked, the elderly woman who came in every Tuesday to read romance novels and provide running commentary. Ethan shared stories about Sophie's more creative interpretations of homework assignments, about the time she'd decided to reorganize his entire kitchen by color instead of function, about her current campaign to convince him they needed a dog, even though their apartment barely had room for the two of them. "She's wearing you down," Lena observed. "I can hear it in your voice." "She absolutely is. I give it another 6 months before we have some kind of small, apartment-appropriate pet." "Fish? Maybe. Or a hamster. Something that won't eat my security deposit." They shared dessert, a chocolate lava cake that was probably too rich but tasted like heaven, feeding each other bites across the table in a way that felt both intimate and playful. Ethan couldn't remember the last time he'd felt this relaxed, this present. Work stress and single-parent anxiety seemed to exist in a different universe, far away from this candlelit corner where Lena smiled at him like he was someone worth knowing. When the check came, they had a brief, good-natured argument about splitting it before Ethan won by pointing out he'd invited her. Lena conceded with the condition that she got to plan and pay for their next date, and Ethan agreed immediately, his heart doing that uncomfortable thing again at the casual assumption of a future. Outside, the November air had turned sharp, carrying the first real bite of winter. Lena shivered slightly, and Ethan draped his jacket over her shoulders without thinking. She pulled it tighter around herself, and he tried not to think about how right she looked wearing his clothes. "I don't want to take you home yet," he admitted as they reached his car. "Then don't. Show me something you love about this city." Ethan thought for a moment, then smiled. "Okay, but you have to trust me." "I do." The simplicity of it, the way she said it like it was obvious, made his chest ache. He drove them to the edge of town to a hill that overlooked the city lights. It wasn't much, just a turnoff on an old road that most people didn't know about, but he'd discovered it years ago when Sophie was a baby, and he'd needed somewhere to drive when she wouldn't sleep. They got out of the car and stood at the overlook, the city spread below them like scattered stars. Lena moved closer, and Ethan wrapped his arms around her from behind, pulling her against his chest. She leaned back into him with a sigh that sounded like coming home. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "I used to come here when things got hard, when Sophie was colicky and Rachel was falling apart, and I felt like I was drowning. I'd drive up here at 2 in the morning with Sophie in her car seat and just breathe. Remind myself that the world was bigger than my tiny apartment and my failing marriage. Did it help? Sometimes, enough to get through another day. Lena turned in his arms to face him. Thank you for sharing this with me. Thank you for being someone I want to share it with. They kissed there on the hill with the city lights spread below them, and it felt like a promise. Not of forever, neither of them was naive enough to believe in guarantees, but of intention. Of choosing to try, to hope, to build something real. When they finally pulled apart, Lena said, I should probably actually get home. My sister will be waiting up like a concerned parent. Tell me about her, your sister. They got back in the car, and Lena talked as Ethan drove, her voice filling the dark space with warmth. Her sister Maria was 2 years older, married to a high school teacher named David, and had made it her mission to make sure Lena didn't waste her life being alone, as she so delicately put it. She means well, Lena said, but she doesn't understand that being alone isn't the same as being lonely, or it wasn't before. Now, she glanced at Ethan. Now I'm starting to see the difference. I never thought I wanted this again, Ethan confessed. After Rachel, I convinced myself that I was fine, that Sophie was enough. And she is enough. She's everything. But this, with you, it's different. It's not about needing someone to complete me. It's about wanting to share my life with someone who gets it. I get it, Lena said quietly. I really do. They pulled up to her house, and Ethan could see a light on in the front window, Maria probably pretending not to watch for them. He walked Lena to the door, their fingers intertwined, neither willing to let go quite yet. When can I see you again? Ethan asked. Sophie's science fair is next Friday. Are you still okay with me coming? More than okay. She's been talking about it non-stop. Fair warning, though, she takes her velociraptors very seriously. I would expect nothing less. Lena kissed him, soft and sweet. And maybe we could do something this weekend, the three of us? There's a new exhibit at the Natural History Museum, prehistoric marine life. Sophie would love it. Perfect. It's a date. They kissed again at her doorstep, and Ethan forced himself to pull away before Maria could come out and make things awkward. He waited until Lena was safely inside before heading home, his heart feeling lighter than it had in years. Mrs. Chen reported that Sophie had been an angel, though she'd asked approximately 700 questions about where Daddy was and if he was with Miss Lena. Ethan carried his sleeping daughter inside, tucking her into bed with Patricia the velociraptor, and wondering how he'd gotten so lucky. His phone buzzed with a text from Lena. Thank you for tonight, for the dinner, and the view, and the honesty, for making me feel seen. Ethan, thank you for giving me a reason to remember what hope feels like. Sleep well. Lena, you too. Dream about something good. He did. For the first time in years, his dreams were full of possibilities instead of anxieties, of a future that included more than just survival. The week leading up to Sophie's science fair was a flurry of activity. Sophie threw herself into her velociraptor project with the intensity of a seasoned researcher, demanding trips to the library for more reference materials and interrogating Ethan about details he definitely didn't know. Lena became an unofficial consultant, texting Sophie facts about dinosaur hunting patterns and bone structure. She even helped them create a display board that Sophie decorated with meticulous care, her tongue poking out in concentration the way it always did when she was focused. The night before the fair, Sophie had a minor meltdown about whether her project was good enough. Ethan found her in her room, surrounded by her research materials, tears streaming down her face. Hey, what's wrong? He sat down on the floor beside her, pulling her into his lap. What if it's not good enough? What if everyone else's projects are better, and the judges think mine is dumb? Your project is amazing. You've worked so hard on it. But what if it's Sophie? Ethan tilted her chin up so she had to look at him. You know what makes your project special? It's not about whether it's the fanciest or has the most information. It's special because you love it, because you put your whole heart into learning about something that matters to you. That's what real science is. Really? Really? And you know what else? Miss Lena is coming tomorrow specifically to see your project. She wouldn't do that if she didn't think you were amazing. Sophie's tears slowed. She's really coming. She promised, didn't she? And Miss Lena keeps her promises. That seemed to settle something in Sophie. She wiped her eyes and looked at her display board with renewed determination. Okay, it's good. I did good work. You did great work. Now get some sleep so you're ready to tell everyone about velociraptors tomorrow. The science fair was held in the school gymnasium, transformed into a showcase of elementary ingenuity. Projects ranged from simple volcano demonstrations to elaborate ecosystems, and Sophie's velociraptor display held its own among the competition. She dressed in her favorite purple dress for the occasion, and she stood beside her project with the proud bearing of someone who knew their subject inside and out. Ethan arrived early to help her set up, and Lena showed up right on time, wearing professional clothes from work and carrying a small bouquet of flowers. For the scientist, she said, presenting them to Sophie with a small bow. Sophie's face lit up like Lena had handed her a treasure. Thank you, Miss Lena. Do you want to hear about my project? I would love to hear about your project. Ethan stepped back and let Sophie launch into her presentation, watching as she explained hunting patterns and pack behavior with the confidence of someone who'd truly mastered her material. Lena asked thoughtful questions, genuinely engaged, and other parents started to gather around to listen. The judges came by eventually, 3 teachers who listened carefully and made notes on their clipboards. Sophie didn't falter, answering their questions with the same enthusiasm she'd shown Lena. When they moved on, she looked at Ethan with anxious hope. How did I do? You were perfect, he said honestly. Better than perfect, Lena added. You taught me things I didn't know, and I work with books about dinosaurs all the time. They walked around the fair together, looking at other projects. Sophie provided running commentary on what she liked about each one, generous with her praise in a way that made Ethan's heart squeeze. Other parents noticed them, probably wondering about Lena's role in their lives, but Ethan found he didn't care. Let them wonder. Let them see that he and Sophie were building something new. At the awards ceremony, Sophie didn't win first place. That went to a 6th grader's project on renewable energy. But she got an honorable mention for exceptional research and presentation. She accepted her certificate with a huge smile, then immediately ran to show Lena. I got a ribbon. Look, it's purple. It matches your dress perfectly, Lena said. I'm so proud of you, Sophie. Can we celebrate? Can we get ice cream? Ethan looked at Lena questioningly, and she nodded. Ice cream sounds perfect. They ended up at a small parlor near the school, Sophie bouncing in her seat as she debated flavors. She finally settled on chocolate with rainbow sprinkles, and they sat in a booth. Sophie on one side, Ethan and Lena on the other, while Sophie recounted every detail of the fair. And then Mrs. Rodriguez said my display was very comprehensive, which Daddy said means I did a really good job of explaining everything. And then the tall judge asked me about pack hunting, and I told him about how velociraptors probably coordinated their attacks like wolves do, and he said that was very insightful. That is very insightful, Lena agreed. You've become quite the expert. Sophie beamed, then her expression turned more serious. Miss Lena? Are you Daddy's girlfriend now? The question hung in the air, and Ethan felt his face heat. Sophie, we talked about this. It's okay, Lena interrupted gently. She looked at Sophie with that same honest attention she always gave her. Would it be okay with you if I was? Sophie considered this with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice. Will you still come to my stuff? Like science fairs and things? Absolutely. If you want me there, I'll be there. And will you still teach me about dinosaurs? As many as you want to learn about. And will you be nice to my daddy? Because he works really hard, and sometimes he's tired, and he needs someone to be nice to him. Ethan felt his throat close up, and Lena's eyes went shiny with unshed tears. I promised to be nice to your daddy, Lena said, her voice a little unsteady. He's pretty easy to be nice to. Sophie nodded, satisfied. Then it's okay with me. You can be his girlfriend. She went back to her ice cream like she hadn't just given them permission to move forward with their relationship, leaving Ethan and Lena staring at each other across the table. Well, Lena said with a shaky laugh, I guess that's settled. I guess so? Ethan reached under the table and found her hand, squeezing gently. For the record, I'm very okay with that arrangement too. Good, because I was going to ask you anyway. Sophie just beat me to it. They finished their ice cream, and when they walked back to the parking lot, Sophie walked between them holding both their hands. It felt natural, right? Like they were already becoming something more than three separate people. That night, after Sophie was in bed, Ethan and Lena sat on his couch with cups of tea, their legs tangled together, talking in quiet voices about everything and nothing. "She's amazing," Lena said. "The way she just accepted this. Accepted me. I thought it would be harder." Kids are resilient when they feel safe. Sophie knows I'll protect her, so she feels okay taking risks, like trusting someone new. "I won't let her down," Lena said fiercely. "I won't let either of you down." "I know, and we won't let you down either. He gestured between them. "This is real for me, Lena. I'm not looking for something casual or temporary. I'm too old and too tired for games." "Me too. She paused, gathering courage. "I want the real thing. The messy, complicated, beautiful real thing. With you, with both of you." Ethan kissed her then, deep and sure, and when they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. "Stay," he said. I'm not asking for, just stay. Sleep here. I want to wake up and know you're here." "Okay," Lena said simply. "Okay." He gave her clothes to sleep in, and they lay in his bed in the dark, wrapped around each other, talking until their words blurred into dreams. It was the first time in 5 years that Ethan had fallen asleep with someone beside him, and he woke in the middle of the night with Lena's head on his chest, her breathing slow and even, and felt peace settle over him like a blanket. This was what he'd been missing. Not just companionship, but partnership. Someone who saw his life, complicated and chaotic and full of a 5-year-old's demands, and chose to step into it anyway. Someone who loved Sophie not because she had to, but because Sophie was easy to love. Someone who made him feel like himself again, like he was more than just Sophie's dad, more than just a guy trying to survive. In the morning, they woke to Sophie standing beside the bed, Patricia the velociraptor clutched in her arms, staring at them with wide eyes. "Miss Lena stayed over?" "She did," Ethan confirmed, sitting up carefully. "Is that okay?" Sophie climbed onto the bed between them. "Can we have pancakes for breakfast?" Lena laughed, and the sound filled the room with warmth. Pancakes sound perfect. They made breakfast together in the small kitchen, Sophie chattering about her dreams while Lena mixed batter and Ethan set the table. It felt like a glimpse of a future Ethan hadn't dared to imagine. Weekend mornings full of laughter and domesticity, a partner who fit into their life like she'd always been there, a family that was chosen rather than obligated. After breakfast, Lena had to leave to help her sister with something, and Sophie gave her a long hug goodbye. "Will you come back soon?" Sophie asked. "Very soon," Lena promised. "Maybe we can go to that museum next weekend like we talked about." "Yes, the prehistoric ocean one. Daddy, can we?" "Absolutely." Ethan walked Lena to her car and they stood in the morning sunshine, reluctant to separate. "Thank you for last night," he said. "For staying, for everything. Thank you for asking me to, for trusting me with this." She gestured back toward the apartment where Sophie was probably already absorbed in some elaborate dinosaur game. "For letting me be part of it." "You're not just part of it anymore," Ethan said. You're essential. Both of us want you here, Lena. Both of us choose you." She kissed him, soft and lingering, then pulled back with a smile. "I choose you too. Both of you. All of this." He watched her drive away, then went back inside to find Sophie arranging her stuffed animals into what she announced was a science fair for toys. "Miss Lena is nice," Sophie said without looking up from her work. "She is. I'm glad she's your girlfriend." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." And standing there in his living room, watching his daughter play while his heart felt full for the first time in years, Ethan let himself believe completely. This wasn't a joke that had backfired or a coincidence that would fade. This was real, built on honesty and choice and the simple courage to hope for something good. This was family, chosen deliberately and built with care, and it was just beginning. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm that felt both new and inevitable. Lena became a fixture in their lives, showing up for dinner on weeknights, joining them for weekend adventures, fitting into the spaces between Ethan and Sophie like she'd been designed for them. She had a drawer at Ethan's apartment now, filled with spare clothes and toiletries, and Sophie had started referring to her as my Lena, with the possessive certainty of a child who'd claimed someone as family. The museum trip had been everything Ethan hoped for, and more. Sophie had pressed her nose against every display case, absorbing information about prehistoric marine life with the same intensity she brought to everything dinosaur-related. Lena had read every placard aloud in different voices, making ancient creatures come alive through storytelling, and Sophie had declared it the best day ever. But reality had a way of intruding on even the best moments, and Ethan's carefully constructed peace shattered on a Tuesday afternoon when Marcus cornered him in the parking garage after work. "We need to talk," Marcus said, positioning himself between Ethan and his car. Ethan's jaw tightened. He'd been avoiding Marcus for weeks, taking lunch at different times, using the stairs instead of the elevator, doing everything possible to minimize contact. "I don't think we do." "Come on, man. Don't be like that. It was just a joke." "A joke." Ethan's voice was flat. "You set up two people as a punchline, filmed them without consent, and thought it was funny. That's not a joke, Marcus. That's cruelty." "Jesus, you're really going to make this a thing? It worked out, didn't it? You're seeing her now. You should be thanking us." The audacity of it left Ethan momentarily speechless. "Thanking you? You think I should thank you for trying to humiliate me?" "We weren't trying to humiliate you. We were trying to help. You needed to get out there, and she—" Marcus shrugged. "She needed someone who wouldn't care about her size. Win-win." Ethan felt rage build in his chest, hot and righteous. "Get out of my way!" "Look, I'm trying to apologize here." "No, you're trying to justify yourself. There's a difference." Ethan stepped closer, and Marcus actually backed up slightly. "You want to know why it worked out? Not because of anything you did, but in spite of it. Because Lena is an incredible person who deserves better than being treated like a punchline. Because I was willing to see past your pathetic setup to the actual human being sitting across from me. You didn't help anything. You just showed me exactly who you are." "Fine, whatever. Be a self-righteous prick about it." Marcus's expression turned ugly. "But don't come crying to me when you realize what you've gotten yourself into. When you're dealing with all the stares and comments about your girlfriend, when Sophie's friends start asking questions." Ethan didn't think. His hand shot out and grabbed Marcus's shirt, slamming him back against a concrete pillar. "Don't you dare talk about my daughter. Don't even think about her. Get off me." Listen very carefully. Ethan's voice was low and deadly calm. "You're going to leave me alone. You're going to delete whatever footage you have from that night. And you're going to stop talking about Lena like she's anything less than the amazing woman she is. Because if I hear that you've said one more word about her, about me, about my family, I will go to HR with a harassment complaint so detailed they'll have no choice but to take it seriously. You can't prove anything. Derek showed the video to half the office. I've got witnesses. I've got the text messages you sent me that night. I've got a pattern of behavior that HR would love to hear about." Ethan released Marcus's shirt and stepped back. "Try me." Marcus straightened his clothes, his face red with anger and embarrassment. "You've changed, man, and not for the better." "You're right. I have changed. I stopped accepting cruelty as normal. I stopped letting people like you set the standard for what's acceptable." Ethan moved toward his car. "Stay away from me, Marcus. I mean it." He drove home with his hand shaking on the wheel, adrenaline making his heart race. He'd never confronted anyone like that before, never let his anger show so clearly. Part of him felt guilty, like he'd crossed some line, but a larger part felt nothing but satisfaction. Lena was at his apartment when he arrived, having picked up Sophie from after-school care. They were making dinner together, Sophie standing on a stool at the counter helping Lena chop vegetables with a plastic knife, both of them laughing at some private joke. "Daddy!" Sophie spotted him first. "Lena's teaching me to make stir-fry. I cut all these peppers myself." "I can see that. You did a great job." He kissed the top of her head, then crossed to Lena and kissed her too, needing the contact to ground himself. Lena pulled back slightly, studying his face. "You okay? You look tense." Had a run-in with Marcus in the parking garage. It's fine. I handled it. Are you sure you're okay? Her hand came up to cup his cheek. What happened? Later, he said quietly, glancing at Sophie. When we have time to talk properly. They got through dinner, though Ethan could feel Lena watching him, cataloging his mood. After Sophie was bathed and in bed, they settled on the couch, and he told her everything. Marcus's ambush, the confrontation, the threats he'd made. I grabbed him, Ethan admitted, physically grabbed him and slammed him against a pillar. I shouldn't have done that. I could have. He was threatening Sophie. Lena's voice was fierce. You were protecting your daughter. He wasn't really threatening her. He was just being an asshole, implying that dating you would somehow be bad for Sophie, that kids would make comments. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. Like my daughter would be ashamed of you, like you're something to be embarrassed about, instead of what? Instead of the best thing that's happened to us in years. Instead of someone who makes Sophie light up when she walks in the room. Instead of someone He stopped, the words caught in his throat. Someone you're what? Lena's voice had gone soft, careful. Someone I'm falling in love with, Ethan said, and watched her eyes go wide. I know it's fast. I know we've only been doing this for a couple months, but I can't keep pretending it's anything less than what it is. Lena's hands came up to frame his face, her eyes bright with unshed tears. You're falling in love with me? Is that okay? It's more than okay. She kissed him, deep and sure. Because I'm falling in love with you too. With both of you. With this whole beautiful, complicated life you've built. They held each other on the couch, and Ethan felt something settle in his chest. This was real. This was happening. And whatever Marcus or anyone else thought about it didn't matter, because they had chosen each other, and that choice was stronger than cruelty. I want to file the complaint, Ethan said after a while. Not just to threaten him, but actually do it. What he did, what they both did, it's not okay. And if I don't say something, they'll just keep doing it to other people. Then do it. I'll back you up however you need. You might get pulled into it. They might ask you to give a statement. Good. Let me tell them exactly what I think of their little game. Lena's expression was steel. I'm not ashamed of what happened, Ethan. I'm not ashamed of us. Let them ask their questions. The HR meeting happened 2 weeks later, and it was every bit as uncomfortable as Ethan had anticipated. He sat across from the HR director, a woman named Patricia, who listened to his story with an increasingly grim expression. Derek was called in separately, and Ethan later learned he'd cracked immediately, confirming everything and providing the video footage without being asked. Marcus was put on administrative leave pending investigation. Derek received a formal warning. The whole office buzzed with gossip, and Ethan weathered it all with his head held high, refusing to engage with speculation or drama. Lena did give a statement, appearing at the office in professional clothes with her spine straight and her voice steady. She described the setup, the humiliation, and the choice she and Ethan had made to see each other as people instead of punchlines. Patricia thanked her for her time, and Ethan walked her back to her car. You were amazing in there, he said. I was honest. There's a difference. She squeezed his hand. How are you holding up? Better than I expected. Janet's been running interference, keeping people from asking too many questions. And honestly, I don't care what they think. I care about you and Sophie. Everything else is just noise. The investigation concluded with Marcus being transferred to a different department and both men being required to complete harassment training. It wasn't the dramatic justice Ethan might have wanted, but it was something. It was accountability. Sophie's 6th birthday arrived in December, and Lena helped plan a party that Sophie declared was perfect. They rented space at a local science center, invited Sophie's entire kindergarten class, and spent 3 hours watching children run wild through interactive exhibits. Lena had arranged for a special presentation on dinosaurs, and Sophie sat in the front row with her eyes shining, Patricia the velociraptor clutched in her arms. At the end of the party, when most of the guests had left and they were cleaning up wrapping paper and cake plates, Sophie climbed into Lena's lap and said, "This was the best birthday ever. Thank you for making it special." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "You're welcome, sweetheart. I'm so glad you had fun." "Lena?" Sophie's voice went quiet, almost shy. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." Do you think, would it be okay if I called you something other than Miss Lena? Because you're not just my daddy's girlfriend anymore. You're my, she struggled for words. You're my grown-up. Like how Emma has her mom and her dad, and sometimes her dad's girlfriend comes to things, but you come to everything. You're always here. Ethan watched Lena's face crumple slightly, watched her fight to keep her composure in front of Sophie. What would you like to call me? Lena asked gently. I don't know. I thought maybe, is it okay if I just call you Lena? Without the miss part? Because that feels right. That feels perfect to me. Just Lena. Sophie hugged her fiercely, and over her head Lena met Ethan's eyes. He could see everything she was feeling reflected there. The weight of Sophie's trust, the responsibility of becoming essential to a child's life, the joy and terror of being chosen as family. That night, after Sophie was asleep and they were curled up on the couch, Lena said, I need to tell you something. Ethan's stomach clenched. Okay. My lease is up at the end of January. Maria and David want to convert my room into a nursery. She's pregnant, which I'm thrilled about, but it means I need to find somewhere else to live. Move in with us, Ethan said immediately, then backtracked at her startled expression. Sorry, I should have thought before I just blurted that out. But I mean it. Move in with us. You're here most nights anyway, and Sophie adores you, and I want to wake up next to you every morning. Ethan, that's a huge step. We've been together for 3 months. I know. And if you're not ready, I understand. But I also know that this feels right. That you feel like home. That Sophie already sees you as family. And He took her hands. I love you, Lena. I'm in love with you. And I want to build a life with you, whatever that looks like. Lena was crying now, tears streaming down her face. I love you too, so much. And yes, I want to move in with you, with both of you. They sealed it with a kiss that turned into more, and later, wrapped around each other in Ethan's bed, Lena said, We should probably tell Sophie, make sure she's okay with it. She'll be ecstatic. She's been asking when you're going to live with us for weeks. They told Sophie the next morning over pancakes, and her reaction was exactly what Ethan had predicted, pure, unbridled joy. She immediately launched into plans for how Lena could decorate her new space, what they'd do on weekends, how they'd have to get more books because Lena had so many books. Moving day was controlled chaos. Maria and David helped, along with a couple of Lena's colleagues from the library. Lena didn't have much furniture. Most of it had belonged to Maria, but she had boxes and boxes of books that they stacked in every available corner of the apartment. We're going to need more shelves, Ethan observed, looking at the towers of boxes in the living room. I can help build them, David offered. I'm pretty handy. That would be great, thanks, man. They worked through the day, and by evening, Lena's belongings were integrated into the apartment in a way that made the space feel fuller, warmer. Her clothes hung in the closet next to Ethan's. Her toiletries lined the bathroom counter. Her favorite mug sat in the cabinet next to his. After everyone left and Sophie was asleep, Ethan and Lena stood in the middle of the living room surrounded by boxes they'd deal with tomorrow and just held each other. We did it, Lena said. We actually did it. Having second thoughts? Not even a little bit. You? This is the surest I've been about anything in years. They spent the next few weeks settling into their new normal. There were adjustments. Lena was tidier than Ethan. He went to bed earlier than she did. They had different approaches to loading the dishwasher that led to their first real argument. But they worked through it all with honesty and compromise, learning each other's rhythms and patterns. Sophie thrived with Lena's presence becoming permanent. Her reading level jumped as Lena introduced her to new books every week. Her confidence grew as she had 2 adults consistently showing up for her, believing in her. She started talking about Lena at school, introducing her to teachers and friends with pride in her voice. One evening in February, Ethan came home from work to find Lena in tears at the kitchen table. His heart stopped. What's wrong? What happened? Nothing's wrong. I'm sorry, She wiped at her face. Sophie made this at school today. Her teacher gave it to me when I picked her up. She handed him a piece of construction paper, and Ethan's throat closed up. It was a drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands, labeled in Sophie's careful printing. My family, Daddy, me, and Lena. She drew me into her family. Lena said, her voice breaking. She chose me. Ethan sat down and pulled her into his arms. Of course she chose you. We both chose you. You're ours, Lena. Your family. I never thought I'd have this. I'd made peace with being alone, with being the aunt who came to family events but never had her own. And now I have everything. So do I, Ethan said fiercely. So do I. That weekend, they went to visit Ethan's parents for the first time since he and Lena had gotten together. His mother had been cautiously supportive over the phone, but Ethan could hear the questions she wasn't asking, the concerns she was holding back. His father had been typically gruff, saying only that as long as Ethan was happy, that was what mattered. The visit went better than Ethan had dared to hope. His mother fell in love with Lena immediately, bonding over books and recipes and stories about Sophie's latest adventures. His father took longer to warm up, but by the end of the day, Ethan found them in the garage together, Lena asking questions about his dad's woodworking projects with genuine interest. She's good people, his father said later, pulling Ethan aside. Reminds me of your mother when we first met. Smart, kind, doesn't take any crap. Yeah, she is. You look happy, son. Happier than I've seen you since before Rachel left. I am happy, Dad. Really happy. Good. Hold on to that. Hold on to her. Women like that don't come around often. Driving home, Sophie asleep in the back seat, and Lena's hand warm in his, Ethan felt a contentment he'd stopped believing was possible. This was his life now, Sunday dinners with family, homework help at the kitchen table, bedtime stories read in different voices, stolen kisses while Sophie played in her room. It was ordinary and extraordinary all at once, built from the rubble of a cruel joke into something beautiful and real. March brought spring and Sophie's kindergarten graduation ceremony. The entire extended family came. Ethan's parents, Lena's sister and brother-in-law, even a few aunts and uncles. Sophie walked across the stage in her tiny cap and gown to receive her certificate, and Ethan felt his eyes burn with proud tears. That's our girl, Lena whispered beside him, and the casual use of our made his heart swell. At the reception afterward, one of the other mothers approached them, someone Ethan vaguely recognized from school events. Your family is lovely, she said with a warm smile. Sophie talks about you both all the time. It's clear how much she's loved. Thank you, Lena said, and if the woman noticed that she and Ethan weren't married, weren't even engaged, she didn't mention it. She just saw what was obvious to anyone paying attention, a family that worked, that loved each other, that had chosen to be together. That night, after the celebration died down and Sophie was asleep, exhausted from excitement, Ethan found Lena standing in Sophie's doorway, watching her sleep. What are you thinking about? He asked softly, coming up behind her. How much my life has changed. 6 months ago, I was living in my sister's spare room, going to work and coming home and reading books alone in my room. And now I have... She gestured at the sleeping child, the apartment around them. I have all of this. I have purpose and love and a little girl who draws me into her family pictures. You've given us just as much. More, maybe. I want to marry you, Lena said suddenly, turning to face him. I know that's supposed to be your line, and I'm not asking you to propose right now, but I need you to know. I want forever with you. I want to legally be Sophie's parent. I want to build a whole life with both of you. Ethan's heart thundered in his chest. How do you feel about summer weddings? What? He grinned, pulling her close. I was going to wait, plan something romantic, but since you brought it up, how do you feel about summer weddings? Because I've been thinking about this for months. I've talked to Sophie about it, talked to my parents, even started looking at rings. You have? I love you, Lena Brooks. I want to marry you. I want Sophie to have your last name hyphenated with mine. I want to adopt more kids together someday if you want that. I want to grow old with you and fight about the dishwasher and watch Sophie graduate high school and college and have a whole messy, beautiful life together. Yes, Lena said through tears. Yes to all of it. Yes. They kissed there in Sophie's doorway, sealing promises they'd both been too afraid to voice. And when they finally pulled apart, Sophie was sitting up in bed watching them with a sleepy smile. Are you getting married? She asked. How long have you been awake? Ethan asked. Long enough.
Are you? Yeah, sweetheart, we are. Is that okay with you? Sophie climbed out of bed and threw her arms around both of them. Can I be in the wedding? You can be whatever you want to be, Lena said.
It's your family too. Can I wear purple? Absolutely. Then yes, it's very okay with me. They stood there, the three of them wrapped around each other, and Ethan felt the last piece of his broken heart slot back into place. This was what healing looked like. This was what choosing love over fear could build. This was family, formed not by blood or obligation, but by the deliberate choice to show up, to stay, to love, even when the world gave you every reason not to. And it had all started with a cruel joke, with two people who were supposed to be punchlines deciding to see each other clearly instead. Started with pancakes and honesty, and the simple courage to hope for something good. The proposal became official 2 weeks later when Ethan took Lena back to the cafe where it had all started. Sophie was in on the plan, barely able to contain her excitement as Mrs. Chen picked her up for a special sleepover that would give her parents time alone. "Remember, Daddy," Sophie had whispered loudly that morning, "you have to get on one knee like in the movies." "I'll remember, sweetheart. And tell her she's beautiful." "I tell her that every day." "Tell her again. It's important." Now sitting across from Lena at the same table where they'd first really seen each other, Ethan felt his heart racing exactly like it had that Saturday morning months ago. The cafe looked different in the evening light, quieter and more intimate, but the memories hung in the air between them. "This is where it started," Lena said softly, looking around. "Where two people who were supposed to humiliate each other decided to be kind instead. Where I realized that sometimes the universe gives you exactly what you need disguised as the worst thing that could happen." Ethan reached across the table and took her hand. "I've been thinking about that day a lot lately, about how close we came to not being here. If you'd walked out when you realized it was a setup, but I didn't. You gave me a reason to stay. You gave me a reason to be brave." He squeezed her hand. "Lena, I know I already asked you to marry me in Sophie's doorway at midnight, which was not exactly the romantic proposal you deserved, so I wanted to do this properly." He slid out of his chair and dropped to one knee beside their table, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Lena's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes already brimming with tears. "Lena Brooks, you walked into my life when I'd forgotten how to hope. You saw me when I felt invisible, chose me when I felt unchosen, and loved my daughter like she was already yours. You've made our house a home and our family complete. I promise to spend every day of the rest of my life making sure you know how extraordinary you are, how deeply you're loved, and how grateful I am that Marcus and Derek were such spectacular idiots." Lena laughed through her tears, and several other patrons had stopped their conversations to watch. "Will you marry me?" Ethan opened the box to reveal a simple gold band with 3 small stones, purple, blue, and green, Sophie's favorite color, his and hers. "Yes," Lena said, her voice breaking. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her, and the cafe erupted in applause. The barista who'd served them that first day was working again, and she brought over 2 glasses of champagne on the house. "I remember you two," she said with a warm smile. "I saw what those guys were trying to do that day, and I saw you decide to be better than that. I'm so glad it worked out." "So are we," Ethan said, pulling Lena close. "So are we." They stayed for hours, talking about wedding plans and the future and all the dreams they were building together. Lena wanted something small and intimate, just family and close friends. Ethan agreed immediately, having no desire for anything elaborate. "I want Sophie to walk me down the aisle," Lena said. "If that's okay with you. I know traditionally she'd be a flower girl or something, but she's more than that. She's part of why I'm saying yes. She'd love that. She'd be honored. And I want it to be here, in this cafe, if they'll let us, because this is where we chose each other." Ethan felt his throat tighten. "That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect." The cafe owner was delighted by the request and offered to close the space for a private event. They set the date for late June, giving them 3 months to plan. Sophie became the most enthusiastic wedding coordinator in history, offering suggestions ranging from practical to wildly creative. "We should have dinosaur decorations," she announced one evening at dinner. I don't think dinosaurs are very romantic, sweetheart, Ethan said gently. But Lena loves dinosaurs. She taught me about them. I do love dinosaurs, Lena confirmed, but maybe we can find a subtle way to include them. Like, what if your bouquet has some ferns and prehistoric-looking plants? Sophie considered this seriously. That could work. And can Patricia be there? Patricia the velociraptor definitely needs to be there. You can carry her down the aisle with you. The planning brought unexpected moments of emotion. When they went dress shopping, Maria came along and got misty-eyed seeing Lena in white. When they sent out invitations, Lena had to include her father's new family in Atlanta, opening old wounds even as she tried to move forward. When they discussed vows, both of them struggled with how to put into words what they meant to each other. But through it all, they had each other and Sophie, their little unit of three that was about to become official. Sophie took her role as ring bearer and aisle walker seriously, practicing her walk through the apartment until she could do it with appropriate solemnity. "Do I have to be serious the whole time?" she asked Lena one night. "Or can I smile?" "You can smile as much as you want. This is a happy day." "The happiest," Sophie agreed, "because we're going to be a real family." "We're already a real family," Lena said firmly. "The wedding just makes it official on paper." 2 weeks before the wedding, Ethan got a call from an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Hello?" "Ethan, it's Rachel." The world seemed to tilt sideways. Ethan sat down heavily, his mind racing. "Rachel, why are you calling? I saw on social media that you're getting married. Congratulations." "How did you—" He stopped, realizing it didn't matter. Someone they both knew must have posted something. "Thank you." "I wanted to—" Rachel's voice wavered. "I wanted to apologize for leaving the way I did, for not being stronger, for abandoning Sophie." Ethan felt a complicated mix of emotions, old anger, newer understanding, and a bone-deep weariness with the past. Why now? Why after all this time? "I've been in therapy for 2 years, working through everything. My therapist thought I should try to make amends. I know it doesn't change anything. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I needed you to know that I'm sorry, that I think about Sophie every day, that leaving her was the biggest mistake of my life." "She doesn't remember you," Ethan said quietly. "She knows she has a birth mother somewhere, but Lena is the one who reads her bedtime stories and helps with homework and shows up for science fairs. I'm glad she has that. I'm glad you both have that. You deserve to be happy, Ethan. You were always a better person than I gave you credit for." "Rachel," he struggled for words. "I forgive you. I don't know if I should, and I don't know if it matters, but I do. You were sick, and I didn't know how to help you, and we both made mistakes. But Sophie is happy now. We're happy. And I need you to respect that by not trying to be part of our lives. I understand. I won't contact you again. I wanted you to know I'm sorry. And I hope Sophie grows up knowing she's loved. She does. She absolutely does." After he hung up, Ethan sat in silence for a long time. Lena found him there when she came home from work, still holding his phone, staring at nothing. "What happened?" He told her everything, and she listened without interrupting. When he finished, she sat beside him and took his hand. "How do you feel?" she asked. "I don't know. Sad for her, maybe. Sad for what Sophie lost, even if she doesn't know it. But also relieved? Because I meant what I said. You're Sophie's mother in every way that matters, and I don't want her confused about that. Do you think we should tell Sophie that her birth mother called?" Ethan considered it. "Not now. Maybe someday, when she's older and asks more questions. But right now, 2 weeks before the wedding, I don't want to introduce that complication. I want her to be completely, unreservedly happy." "Okay, we'll follow your lead on this." He pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo, grounding himself in the present. "I love you. I love the life we're building, and I'm so grateful that whatever happened in the past led me here." "Me too," Lena whispered. "Me too." The week before the wedding, Lena's father called to say he wouldn't be able to make it. She hung up the phone with carefully controlled composure, then excused herself to the bedroom. Ethan gave her a few minutes before following, finding her sitting on the edge of their bed with tears streaming down her face. "He's not coming," she said. "He has a scheduling conflict, which we both know means his new wife doesn't want him acknowledging his old family." "I'm sorry, love. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't care. I haven't seen him in person in 5 years, but I wanted him to walk me down the aisle. I wanted him to see that I found someone who loves me, that I'm building something good. I wanted him to care." Ethan sat beside her and pulled her into his arms. "I know, and he should care. He's missing out on knowing the most incredible woman I've ever met. Sophie's walking me down the aisle anyway. I should be okay with just that." "But you wanted both. That's allowed. You're allowed to want your father to show up for you." They sat like that until Lena's tears subsided, and then she said, "You know what? I do have people who show up for me. I have Maria and David. I have your parents, who've treated me like a daughter. I have colleagues from the library who are coming. I have Sophie, who's been practicing her aisle walk for weeks. And I have you." "You have me," Ethan confirmed. "Always." The night before the wedding, they stuck to tradition and spent the night apart. Ethan stayed in the apartment with Sophie while Lena went to Maria's. Sophie was too excited to sleep, peppering Ethan with questions about tomorrow. "What if I trip walking down the aisle?" "Then you get up and keep walking. Everyone will understand." "What if I drop the rings?" "Then we pick them up together." "What if I cry?" "Then we all cry together. It's okay to cry at weddings, sweetheart." Sophie was quiet for a moment, then said, "Daddy, after tomorrow, Lena will really be my mom, right?" "She's already your mom in every way that matters. But yes, after tomorrow, it'll be official. She'll legally be your parent along with me." "Good." Sophie snuggled deeper into her pillow. "Because I love her. A lot. She loves you too. So much." "Daddy, do you think my birth mother would be happy that I have Lena?" The question caught Ethan off guard. "Why are you thinking about that?" "Emma was talking about her birth mother at school. She's adopted, and she said she has two moms, the one who grew her in her tummy and the one who tucks her in at night. And I thought, I kind of have that too, right?" Ethan's throat tightened. "Yeah, sweetheart. You kind of do. I don't remember her, my birth mother, but I hope she's okay, and I hope she's happy that I have Lena. I think," Ethan chose his words carefully, "I think she would be very happy that you're loved and cared for and have someone as wonderful as Lena in your life." "Okay, good." Sophie yawned hugely. "I'm going to sleep now so tomorrow comes faster." She was out within minutes, leaving Ethan to stare at the ceiling and marvel at his daughter's capacity for empathy and understanding. At 6 years old, she was already wiser than many adults he knew. His phone buzzed with a text from Lena. "Can't sleep, too excited, also nervous. Is it normal to be this nervous?" Ethan: "Completely normal. I'm nervous too." Lena: "What if I mess up my vows?" Ethan: "Then you mess them up. I'll still know what you mean." Lena: "I love you. I can't wait to marry you tomorrow." Ethan: "I love you too. See you at the altar." The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, one of those perfect June days that felt like a gift. Ethan got himself and Sophie ready with shaking hands, double-checking that they had the rings, that Sophie's purple dress was perfect, that he hadn't forgotten anything important. His parents arrived to help, his mother fussing over both of them, and his father offering quiet support. They drove to the cafe together, arriving early to help with last-minute setup. The space had been transformed with simple decorations. White flowers, soft lighting, chairs arranged in intimate rows facing a small altar area. Maria was there with David, putting finishing touches on centerpieces. She hugged Ethan tightly when she saw him. "Thank you," she said, "for making my sister so happy, for giving her the family she always wanted." "She's given us just as much," Ethan replied. "More, probably." The guests began arriving, colleagues from work, including Janet, who gave Ethan a fierce hug and told him she'd known from the start that Lena was special. Friends from the library, parents from Sophie's school, extended family members who'd come to celebrate. Ethan's hand shook as he greeted people, his nervousness building as the ceremony time approached. Then the music started, a simple acoustic guitar playing a song Lena had chosen, and everyone stood. Sophie appeared at the back of the cafe, holding Patricia the velociraptor in one hand and Lena's hand in the other. They walked down the aisle together, Sophie's face serious with concentration, and Ethan felt tears prick his eyes. But it was Lena who undid him completely. She wore a simple white dress that highlighted her curves, her hair loose around her shoulders, and she was looking at him with such love and joy that he had to blink hard to keep from crying. Sophie led her to the front and then stepped aside, taking her position as ring bearer with evident pride. The officiant, a friend of Lena's from the library who'd gotten ordained online specifically for this, smiled at them both. "We're gathered here today in a place that holds special meaning for Ethan and Lena," she began. "This cafe is where they first met, where they chose to see each other clearly despite circumstances designed to tear them apart. It's where they proved that kindness and authenticity can transform cruelty into love." She spoke about the journey they'd taken, about choosing family deliberately rather than accepting it by default, about the courage it takes to hope after being hurt. Then it was time for vows. Ethan went first, his voice steady despite his shaking hands. "Lena, when I met you, I was convinced I was done hoping for anything beyond survival. You showed me that hope isn't weakness, it's the bravest thing we can do. You've loved my daughter like she's your own. And you've loved me with a patience and generosity I don't deserve, but am grateful for every single day. I promise to choose you every morning, to build our family with intention and care, to support your dreams as fiercely as you support mine. I promise to remember that we're a team, that we're stronger together than we could ever be apart. And I promise to never take for granted the incredible gift of being loved by you." Lena was crying openly now, and she had to take a moment to compose herself before beginning her own vows. "Ethan, you saw me when I felt invisible. You chose me when I felt unchosen. You gave me a family when I'd convinced myself I'd be alone forever. You trusted me with Sophie, which is the greatest honor of my life. I promise to love you both with everything I have, to show up even when it's hard, to choose honesty over comfort and growth over stagnation. I promise to be the kind of partner and parent who makes our family feel safe and loved and valued. And I promise to always remember that our story started with a choice to be kind, and to keep making that choice every day for the rest of our lives." The ring exchange was simple, Sophie handing over the bands with a grin that suggested she was very proud of not dropping them. Ethan slipped Lena's ring onto her finger, and she did the same for him, their hands trembling with emotion. "By the power vested in me by the internet and the state," the officiant said with a smile, "I now pronounce you married. You may kiss." Ethan pulled Lena close and kissed her as their family and friends erupted in applause. Sophie squealed with delight, and when they pulled apart, Lena immediately bent down to scoop her up, including her in their embrace. "We did it," Lena whispered. "We're a family." "We were always a family," Sophie said matter-of-factly. "Now we just have papers that say so." The reception was exactly what they'd wanted, casual, joyful, full of love and laughter. They'd hired a local caterer who provided simple but delicious food, and someone had set up a playlist of their favorite songs. Sophie danced with anyone who would partner her, spinning in her purple dress with Patricia clutched to her chest. Ethan's father gave a toast that was surprisingly emotional, talking about how proud he was of the man his son had become, and how lucky they all were to have Lena join the family. Maria spoke about watching her sister bloom over the past months, about the joy of seeing her finally get the happiness she deserved. Then Sophie asked if she could say something, and Lena lifted her up so everyone could see her. "I'm glad Daddy married Lena," Sophie announced to the room, "because now I have two parents who love me, and that's pretty cool. Also, Lena knows everything about dinosaurs and makes really good pancakes. The end." The room erupted in laughter and applause, and Sophie took a bow before demanding more cake. As the evening wore on and the celebration continued around them, Ethan pulled Lena aside to the same table where they'd had their first date. "1 year ago," he said, "we sat at this table, two people who were supposed to be a joke. And look at us now." "Look at us now," Lena echoed, her hand finding his. "Married, parents together, building something real. Do you ever think about what would have happened if one of us had walked out that day? If we'd let Marcus and Derek win?" "Sometimes. But then I remember that we didn't. We chose differently. We chose each other. Best choice I ever made."
Second best, Lena corrected with a smile. The best choice was deciding to propose in Sophie's doorway at midnight. You're never going to let me live that down, are you? Never. It's part of our story now. The engagement that happened because we couldn't wait to start forever. They sat there watching their daughter dance with her new grandmother, watching their family and friends celebrate the life they were building, and Ethan felt a peace so complete it almost scared him. This was happiness. This was what it looked like when you chose hope over fear, when you built something new from broken pieces, when you let yourself be seen and loved exactly as you are. Later, when the party had wound down and most guests had left, the three of them stood outside the cafe in the warm June evening. Sophie was half asleep on Lena's shoulder, and Ethan had his arm around both of them. Ready to go home? He asked. Yeah, Lena said softly. Let's go home. They drove back to their apartment, their home, and put Sophie to bed together. She barely woke up as they changed her into pajamas and tucked her in, Patricia placed carefully beside her pillow. Love you, Mama, Sophie mumbled, the words slipping out in her half-asleep state. Love you, Daddy. Lena's eyes filled with tears. It was the first time Sophie had called her that, and the weight of it settled over them both like a blessing. We love you too, sweetheart, Lena whispered. So very much. In their own room, Ethan and Lena collapsed onto the bed, still in their wedding clothes, too tired to change, but too happy to care. We're married, Lena said, like she still couldn't quite believe it. We're married, Ethan confirmed. You're stuck with me now, Mrs. Brooks Cole. Best decision I ever made, she said, echoing his words from earlier. Choosing you. Choosing this. Choosing us. Want to know a secret? Ethan pulled her close. I started falling in love with you when you rambled about being early to our first date. You were so nervous and so honest, and I thought, this is someone real, someone worth knowing. I started falling in love with you when you said we weren't a joke, when you looked at me like I mattered, like I was worth choosing. Nobody had ever done that before. They lay there in the dark, two people who'd been set up to fail and had chosen to succeed instead. Two people who'd turned cruelty into kindness, humiliation into love, a terrible joke into a beautiful life. 6 months later, Ethan got a letter in the mail from an address he didn't recognize. Inside was a brief note from Marcus. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, and I don't blame you, but I've been thinking a lot about what I did, about how I treated you and Lena. I was wrong, completely, inexcusably wrong. I let you go to HR, and I deserved the consequences, but I wanted you to know that seeing you two together, seeing the family you've built, it made me realize what an asshole I'd been, not just to you, but in general. I've been in therapy working on it. This isn't an attempt to get forgiveness or make you respond. I just wanted you to know that you were right and I was wrong, and I'm trying to be better. I hope you're happy. From what I've seen, you deserve it. Ethan showed the letter to Lena that evening while Sophie played with her dinosaurs in the living room. What do you think? He asked. Lena read it carefully, then set it down. I think people can change if they want to badly enough. I think this is probably as close to a real apology as we'll get, and I think... She paused. I think we can acknowledge it and then keep living our lives. We don't owe him forgiveness or a response, but we can appreciate that he's trying. That's what I thought too. Ethan folded the letter and put it away. I don't need his apology to be happy. I already am. So am I, Lena said, happier than I ever imagined possible. That spring, they started the process of legally adding Lena's name to Sophie's birth certificate as her parent. The paperwork was extensive and sometimes frustrating, but Sophie was thrilled, declaring to anyone who would listen that she was getting her real mama's name officially. The day the adoption was finalized, they celebrated with a small party at home. Sophie wore her purple dress from the wedding and carried Patricia everywhere, introducing the stuffed velociraptor to everyone as her honorary sister. Does this mean I get to call you Mom all the time now? Sophie asked Lena as they cut the cake. You could have called me that all along, sweetheart. You didn't need papers for that. I know, but now it's official. Now everyone knows you're my mom. Now everyone knows, Lena agreed, her voice thick with emotion. That night, after Sophie was asleep and the house was quiet,
Ethan found Lena standing in Sophie's doorway again, just like she had been the night he'd first said he loved her. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "About how far we've come, about how this all started with such cruelty, and it turned into—" She gestured at the sleeping child, the home they'd built together. "It turned into everything I never knew I wanted." "Me too," Ethan said. "Every single day I'm grateful for what we built from that terrible joke." "It's not a joke anymore," Lena said firmly. "It's a love story. It's a family. It's proof that choosing kindness and hope can transform everything." "It is," Ethan agreed. "It absolutely is." Years would pass, and their story would become family legend, the tale of how Mom and Dad met, told, and retold at family gatherings, with Sophie adding her own dramatic flourishes. They'd face challenges like any family, weather storms and celebrate victories, grow and change, and adapt together. But they'd always come back to that cafe on a Saturday morning, to the choice they'd made to see each other clearly, to the moment when cruelty could have won but kindness triumphed instead. They'd remember that love, real love, isn't about perfect circumstances or fairy tale beginnings. It's about showing up even when you're scared, choosing hope even when you've been hurt, and building something beautiful from whatever materials you're given. Marcus and Derek had meant to create a punchline. Instead, they'd given two lonely people exactly what they needed to find each other. They'd orchestrated a setup that backfired so spectacularly, it became a testament to human resilience and the transformative power of genuine connection. Standing in Sophie's doorway, watching their daughter sleep with Patricia the purple velociraptor clutched in her arms, Ethan and Lena understood something fundamental about love. It doesn't always arrive in neat packages or follow expected scripts. Sometimes it shows up disguised as the worst thing that could happen, and it's up to you to recognize it, claim it, and build it into something extraordinary. They'd done exactly that. They'd taken a cruel joke and transformed it into a family. They'd chosen each other deliberately, loved each other fiercely, and created a home built on honesty, kindness, and the radical belief that everyone deserves to be seen, valued, and chosen. And every morning, when Lena woke up beside Ethan with Sophie padding into their room for morning hugs, she remembered what it felt like to be invisible and unchosen. She remembered the pain of being someone's punchline, and she felt overwhelming gratitude that she and Ethan had been brave enough to write a different ending to the story that had been scripted for them. They'd proven that dignity defeats cruelty every time, that choosing to see someone clearly is the most powerful form of love. That family isn't about biology or perfection, it's about showing up, staying present, and loving each other through everything life throws your way. Marcus and Derek had wanted humiliation and laughter at someone else's expense. Instead, they'd accidentally created the foundation for a love story that would last a lifetime. And though Ethan and Lena never thanked them for it, never would, they sometimes acknowledged in the quiet moments that even the cruelest setups can become gifts when met with grace and courage. This was their family, built from ruins and jokes, and two people brave enough to hope. This was their love, chosen deliberately every single day. This was their happily ever after, not because it was perfect, but because they'd fought for it, nurtured it, and refused to let cruelty define their story. And it all started with a blind date that was meant to be a disaster in a cafe full of strangers, with two people who decided that being kind was more important than protecting themselves from potential pain. That choice, that single moment of choosing dignity over fear, had blossomed into everything they'd never known they needed. It was proof that the best love stories aren't the ones that start perfectly. They're the ones where people choose each other anyway, build something beautiful from broken pieces, and refuse to let the world's cruelty dim their light. They're the stories where hope wins, where kindness triumphs, and where two people who were meant to be a punchline become each other's greatest love instead. This was their story. And it was just beginning.